Welcome to Turn a Page, the official comic book club for Nerd Initiative. Each week, the NI Bullpen will be covering the world of comics, talking to creators, deep diving into some fantastic stories, and much more. Now let's hand it over to the team and turn a page.
And what is going on, everyone? It is Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you are tuned in for another edition of Turn a Page, the official comic book club for Nerd Initiative. My name is Ken M. You know me as the host of the ODPH podcast. I'm also Nerd Initiative editor-in-chief. To my left, your right, don't adjust your dials. Our pop culture connoisseur Tom is not in the studio today, but fear not, we have another comic enthusiast here. You also know him as the host of Wrestling Night Live every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please give a warm welcome to the one and only Rich.
Coming to you direct from folding chair in the I thought I had to do the whole Tom intro. I'm glad because I don't remember all of it, but glad to be here. Always glad to talk comic books, especially I can't swear. It's too early on to swear. So you'll have to wait and see if I end up dropping any swear words. But it's awesome. You just have to know that.
Yes, it is bleeping awesome because we are very fortunate enough to be talking about a brand new comic coming out from Image Comics. The FOC is March 3rd. And trust me, after this episode, you'll be running to the comic shop to pick this up because the wait till March 26th is going to be super long. I am not lying about this, folks. When you see this book come out at your shops, you're going to be wanting to run and go pick it up because it is sci-fi, it is spy, it is a whole mix of just bleeping awesome. And we are very fortunate enough to have the writer of this book on the line, who you might know from such books as What's the Furthest Place from Here, 4 Kids Walk into a Bank, Punisher, X-Men. My God, he has done so much, and like we could just rant and rave about that, but we want to talk about we're taking everybody down with us. Please welcome to the show the one and only Matthew Rosenberg. Matt, what is going on?
Nothing. I'm here. This is what's going on. I don't think there's anything else going on other than us hanging out right now.
Well, I mean, we appreciate you coming by, but I mean, everybody should be going to the comic shops right now as you're watching this on your phones to go pre-order this because, my God, this book is amazing. So
it doesn't feel safe. They should wait until we're done.
Well, you know, you got to live a life on the edge a little bit.
Yeah, fair. If you're driving, stay. If you're riding a bike, that's fine. Go ride a bike. Watch this. Go.
Yes, indeed.
That's my rules.
Fair enough. That's great to live by. And like we said, this book is slated to come out March 26th. How did this whole story come about?
So, yeah, the book has a sort of weird origin because I'm doing it with Stefano Landini, and we worked on The Punisher together when I was doing The Punisher at Marvel. And we were slated to do another book together that we were both very excited about. And it was right when the pandemic hit and everything went into chaos and Diamond wasn't shipping books and no one knew if printers would be printing books and all this sort of chaotic stuff. And our editor was furloughed and the book was paused. And then in the surrounding chaos, the book was handed to a different editor and I was no longer the writer attached. And Stefano had, bless him for being a sweetheart, reached out to me and he said, "Why did you leave our book?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about, man." And found out I got fired that way. And then he said to me, "I wanted to do this book with you. We should do a book together." And I said, "I would love to." And he said, "I have an idea for a book." And I said, "That's all. Makes my job easier. What is it?" And he sent me a drawing of a robot. And I said, "That's a really cool robot," which it is. And I said, "What's the story?" And he said, "That's it. It's about this robot." And then I had to figure out all this other stuff that we could do about the robot. And that is the origin of how the book originally started. There's a lot of me figuring out how to squeeze in all this drama and emotion and make it about, you know, family and adulthood and revenge and regret and spies and violence and the way that violence affects, you know, not just the victim and the perpetrator, but the families and all of that. But at the core of the book, it's just about, it started with, this is a cool robot and we should tell the story about it. And so it's both of these things. It's a very, I tried to make it very smart and Stefano made it cool and fun. And then we smash it together and that's what the book is.
And to think out of all of that, it kind of had that Friday moment. You found out about this when you got fired.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
how did I get fired? I didn't know. Jeez.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's I think that was a really crazy moment, and I think it's I tell that story and I feel a little bad because I think it was a little. I don't think there was anything malicious. I think there was just Marvel's a big company, and there's a lot of cross wires, and people maybe didn't know that that I was on the book, or maybe someone else was supposed to tell me that I wasn't going to be on the book. And people change and move around and that stuff all the time, so it wasn't like I was fired. I was still doing stuff at Marvel, but
Still makes for a good part of the story.
Yeah.
it's much more fun to be like they fired me in secret. Than to be like there was some an email didn't get sent in the pandemic. But not as exciting to say that.
No, I think I like your version better, the original version. We'll stick to that.
Yeah, it's like making lemons out of lemonade out of lemons. Like you say, you take a negative and make it a positive. And my God, like I say, if this is the result of being fired, more people should be fired.
I think definitely whether or not this is the result of being fired, more people should be fired. But that's a different conversation.
I like it. So now now that we kind of have the backstory, I would like this. I don't want the elevator pitch because we can go a little longer, obviously, than that. But we'll say, don't give the Hollywood trailer. Like Hollywood trailers now go too far. Let's do some mystery. But what is the book about?
Okay. That feels a little loaded because our solicit people have been like, it goes too far, and I'm like, well, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But the book is about it's set in a sort of 1970s James Bond-esque world of like sexy super spies and power-hungry villains. But our book is about a young girl, 13-year-old girl named Annalise, who is the 13-year-old daughter of the world's greatest mad scientist. And she was raised and lives on an island with her mad scientist father and his army of assistant robots that he's made. And one day, she discovers that they've been in hiding. She didn't know that. This was just been her life the whole time. She thought this was normal. She discovers that they have been living in seclusion, and she discovers why they've been living in seclusion, and her life completely changes. And so that is the spoiler-free pitch. It is a buddy team-up sci-fi spy revenge comedy with heart and sadness, or drama with jokes, just depending on how much you laugh. It's either a drama with jokes or a comedy with sad parts.
It definitely walks the line for both, because I mean, honestly, this book is so multi-layered in so many different themes, and I think that's what makes it really jumped out to me as a reader, because I was sitting there just like I say, you can tell by the sound of my voice, I was blown away by this, because I'm like, there is just so much going on with this, and how this is all presented. It's like I remember in the press release it was saying about a spy-fi thriller.
Yeah,
like I say, when you're kind of creating stories like this, there's a lot of the spy element in this story. Is that something that really challenges you for coming up with ideas for being as a writer, or is it just something that are you always a fan of this and you want to just take that concept and really go like 180 or in your own direction with that?
Yeah, so like I'm a huge spy fan. Like I'm a huge James Bond nerd, but I also like this, like I love James Bond, I love Mission Impossible, I love Bourne, I love all those things. Like those are I grew up on Bond, and those are always have my heart. But I'm also a fan of the sort of the more literal spy stories, the like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Quiet American, like the kind of the deconstruction, the less glamorous, less sexy, more morally ambiguous spy stories. Like I said, when Stefano came with a book, he wanted to do a sexy kind of spy thing, and with a robot, and I didn't. As much as I love James Bond, which is a lot, I also wouldn't want to tell a story like that. James Bond is like sort of problematic in a bunch of ways. It's I don't want to say it's a dated idea, because I still love James Bond, and I still, every time there's a James Bond movie, I go see it opening night, and I buy the Blu-ray, and I'm still amped. But there's certain elements to that I wouldn't want to celebrate in my work, that I don't want to make and condone. And so I like the idea of sort of deconstructing it a little bit, but I'm not going to do the ground. I mean, even if I didn't have a robot starting point, I'm not going to do the grounded, smart deconstruction. That's not who I am. I'm not that writer. And so I wanted to go the other way and sort of make it kind of crazy and over the top and absurd, which James Bond can be, and it can still be sort of a love letter to that while sort of also making fun of it. I mean, that's sort of the brilliance of James Bond, is that like some of them are grounded and some of them are, fights on moon bases, and it all works. But the real thing that sort of made it work for me is that one of the problems I always have with James Bond is just that he's a guy who works for the government assassinating people, and I don't think that's necessarily a cool job. But I in a movie it's great. In the real world, I like it less. And
Understandable.
Yeah, I don't think that's a hot take.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that a lot, and just how to do this story and not sort of celebrate that idea. And I think some of that for me came down to the thing I struggle with a lot, which is just the way violence is portrayed in both like the news and media, but also in our fiction, and the way violence is sort of always portrayed as a like perpetrator and victim type thing, and actual violence never works that way. It has amazing ripple effects and sort of spreads, and it's generational, and it affects communities, and it affects nations, and it's the one person killing another person isn't just a story of two people, it's a story of a lot of people. And so that's what I wanted to do, was a story like a James Bond story, but from the perspective of someone who isn't the A or the B, the hero or the villain. And so that's why you follow Annalise, who is the daughter of basically, I mean, he's essentially a Bond villain. It's like one of his kids who has no idea and is sort of roped into this conflict. And that's how I felt like I could approach a spy story and make it absurd and feel different and fun and sad and all those things that I wanted it to be.
No, definitely. And since you brought up about how you're a big James Bond fan, who's your favorite James Bond?
My gut says Connery. Like Connery's kind of the best, but I don't know. Daniel Craig was really good. Like he's just really a good Bond, and like he felt like he was doing something different than. I like everyone. I'm a big Roger Moore guy too, but a lot of people feel like they're taking the Connery building blocks and making something new with them. And Daniel Craig felt like he was wiping off the board and starting over from scratch. And I really liked, I mean, he literally was doing that with Casino Royale, but I liked the idea. I like what he brought to it. So, but at the end of the day, I'm a Connery guy. Those movies are ridiculously great.
I'm there with you.
I was going to say, I have a lot of the same feelings about it, because it's just like, I've always been a Sean Connery guy, but I really like Daniel Craig. Yeah. But it was different. It was just a different take on the whole.
Yeah, I don't think it's weird to say like both of them, because they feel like, if you were like, I like Sean Connery and I like Timothy Dalton, you're kind of like, well, it's kind of like two versions of the same thing. And like, this is like, oh, it's totally different. Like, I like chocolate pie and I like hamburgers. It's like, that's not the same thing. You can have both of those.
Yeah, it is. It's completely like if you think about like the character itself, like the iconic portion is Sean Connery. That's what you bring to the table. But Daniel Craig brought like a grittiness, if you will, to Bond.
Yeah,
like, almost like a real feel.
Yeah,
like, this is what a real spy would probably be like.
Yeah. And he's just so good, and so like he Connery is fun and Daniel Craig is like intense, and I like both. I like both those flavors.
Speaking of you have a great artist on this book. Stefano's an amazing artist.
Yeah.
The book looks obviously as good as your writing is. It's fantastic as far as the visuals as well. So, I mean, crossing both boards. I do have to ask though, was there any ideas that you came up with, or even he came up with, that just really didn't mesh well? Like, is there something that went too far or too underwhelming or anything like that?
No, the sort of the opposite. The funny thing about Stefano, like we worked together on a bunch of stuff before, but I never wrote scripts for him, because he came in on The Punisher to help us hit deadlines, and so he was the second artist, and so he wasn't. I didn't know who was going to be drawing them when I wrote the script, and that's how a lot of like, Marvel and DC stuff works, that it's just you write a script and you have to sort of write it kind of cookie cutter because you can't speak to someone's strengths. And so when we started this book, I loved working with Stefano, and I knew that, and I was excited to do it again, but I didn't fully understand how good he was. And so what actually ended up happening is that I would give him, we just added to the first issue. The first issue is almost 40 pages because I kept adding scenes, because I kept being like, oh, he really killed that, and he's really crushing on this. And so like actually each issue is better because he is, I'm trying to find his limits and push him, because I'm incredibly intimidated by how good he is, and frustrated by it, and I want to see him fuck up on the page or screw up on the page. So I want to be like, oh, you did that wrong, and sorry, buddy, but he's just not, and he's just really good at everything. And so no, the if anything is sort of the underwhelming part, it's me. The starting point for me on the book was like, I didn't challenge him enough and didn't let him breathe enough. I think there's a scene in issue 3 that I literally wrote in the script, like, this isn't hyperbole. I wrote a note that said, I don't think you can actually draw this. I think this is too complicated to draw, but this is what I want to happen. Give it a shot, and if you can't make it work in a day, I'll give you a new page and we'll just start over. And he sent it back a day later, and I was like, oh my God, it's perfect. Like, it's so clear and easy to understand and concise. And I just did not think he was going to be, I didn't think it was, I was like, I don't know how you do this in a page or a page and a half. Like, I was like, this feels like it's 6 pages. And he just does it, and he's just so good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like a hold my beer moment. He's like, oh, you challenged me. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, always, he's constantly doing that. And I just, we have a bunch of pages that are just like a ton of panels, and he was like, oh, I love it. Like, that's great. And I'm just like, okay. And then like later we do it, and in another issue we have another page, and I was like, he's great at getting the emotion and sort of the acting on the characters. And I was like, let's do it again, only now you're going to do it with a robot, and let's see if you can capture the emotion on the robot that doesn't have expressions, it just has body language, and you're just doing it like shoulders up. And he does it, and it's awesome. And I was like, oh yeah, without any dialogue you can tell what is happening here. It's so good. He's so good, man. I'm very much just riding his coattails as far as I can go on the book.
No, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, when you have you have a creative partner like that you can really just give a kind of a blank statement to, and they just really run wild with it and really push you, and then you start. I mean, it kind of just is like iron sharpening iron. You really get bringing out the best of each other for this, and you can definitely tell. I mean, from issue 1 alone, like, I can't wait till we start deep diving into the series. But you can definitely tell that there's that sense of we're not one-upsmanship, because I don't think that's the right word, but is really just pushing to get the best out of you both for on the creative standpoints.
Yeah, I mean, he makes me want to be a better writer, which is the highest compliment I can give to an artist. Like, I turn in a script, and when I get pages back, I'm immediately like, okay, I got to rewrite that whole dialogue. I got to punch this up. Like, this next part has to be better, because he's just crushing it. And as much as fun as it is to ride coattails, after a while you start to feel like a bit of a jerk, so you want to bring something to the team.
Yeah, understandable. And then you have an amazing cover artist on here too as well. And there's one cover though that definitely jumped out to me, and that's the one by Josh Hood that I'm going to throw up here in a second, because I saw this and I was like, is this a die cut cover? Because we don't see this that often, and right here in the center. So where did the idea for this come about?
So the die cut cover is funny, because we were doing all the covers, and I was like, we should do some novelty. I like a novelty. I like something that people are like, that's dumb, but it's fun. And we were trying to think if there was a novelty we could do. And then one of my editors, Eric Harburn, who's a great editor, and was the editor of Boom for a long time, and he's the editor on like Something's Killing the Children and a bunch of books like that. He was like, well, he was just sort of giving me a list of things we could do, and he was like, we could do a die cut one. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what it would be. And his first suggestion was like, well, what about the Bond, like the bullet hole and the frame, and then you open it. And I was like, yeah, that's really cool. And so we didn't have a lot of time, and Josh Hood was my my collaborator on We Can Never Go Home. He's, you know, been I'm just a huge fan of his and love his work from the start of my career. And I just pinged him. I was like, Josh, I was going to ask you to do a cover. Can you do something fast? Like we just had this dumb idea and we want to get it done. If it's not okay. And he was like, yeah, I can do whatever you want. And I said, okay, we want to do this kind of James Bond, like gun shooting die cut cover. And he was like, so it's the die cut cover. So the front cover is like the bullet hole and then you open it. And I said, yeah. And he said, so when you open the cover, it's just going to be a tiny figure floating in space. And I was like, oh yeah, that idea doesn't work at all. Like, this is a horrible idea. And I was like, it works on a movie screen because it's not something that you present in that ratio in that way. And so then I was like, yeah, maybe it's a bullet wound and then you open it and you see who's shooting. And he was like, okay, yeah, I could do that. And he came back and what he did was so cool. Yeah, I love it. And I'm very excited. We haven't obviously printed them yet, but I'm very excited to get that. When you work at Image, they just ask you how many copies of everything you want. Like, it's, you know, they just print them for you and you can take as many as you want. And I took extra copies of the die cut cover because I was like, yeah, that's something I'm going to want to like give out years from now and be like, look how cool this is. So yeah, I'm very excited for that cover.
Yeah, because all the covers are amazing too. Like I say, the artists that you have on there, but that one just jumped out to me because as an old school '90s reader, I'm like,
yeah,
die cut, like that, just like between that and like Chromain covers, like I was like, okay, that's my wheelhouse, and I'm seeing this, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know how this is pulled off, but not that I wasn't already sold on this book, but I'm like, okay, I need to go buy this one now, this issue especially.
Well, I hesitate to tell you, I also asked about doing the chrome covers, and they were like, it's so expensive. They were like, you have to sell so many books to make it worthwhile, and so we're not doing one. But I tried.
Okay, well, yeah, I appreciate. Well, the fact that I got a die cut, I'm happy. I'm sold on that.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely was a good selling point. Speaking of right now, the current indie scene is really exploding, especially over at Image. How would you describe the current state of comics from a creator's standpoint?
Oh, I mean, I think it's awesome. Image, I feel, I was a little kid when Image started, and it was the coolest thing in the world to me. And I love them. I've always been an Image fan, but it is something special when you're making a book and you sort of look around at all your peers and you see that they're bringing like their A games and really doing books that you're excited about. Like it's really nice to be excited for your peers, and also like, there's that friendly bit of not one-upsmanship, but the friendly bit of competition feels wrong, but like it's inspiration to see how good other people's books are. And now, like, I mean, the month my book drops in March, my partner on my other Image book, What's the First Place from Here, Tyler Boss, has a book called You'll Do Bad Things, which is like a giallo slasher horror book, and it's one of the best books I've read in years. Dennis Camp and Eric Sawatsky have an amazing like time travel miniseries coming out. There's just so many books that are awesome, that like you just want to, you feel both honored to be a part of like a wave of something, like a moment, but also like you're like, man, I just really want to do my best and live up to how good all these other books are. It's really sort of the best case scenario for making something is having the people around you also be making things that you're a fan of.
Yeah. There's definitely some awesome stuff. Most of the books I review are indie books, and a lot of them are Image. Like every week, I at least have two.
Yeah. There's so many good Image books right now. Falling in Love on the Path to Hell and Black Cloak and Power Fantasy, and there's just a lot that I just really love. And Department of Truth is back. Like there's just so many Image books, World Tree, and it's really fun to be in. There's not a physical room, but it's fun to be in the figurative room of making these books is fun and a little intimidating, but it's a good time.
But it's also a great point too about you're seeing so much creativity come from creators. Like it's not just superhero books anymore, and you're seeing more fans. Like when we interact with our listeners and readers online, it's a lot more they're picking up indie stuff and they're really checking out, and we're getting a wide variety of stories and really emphasizing about like that aspect, because I think the one thing is especially to try selling to new readers is like you really want to hook them on the story as much as the characters and really give them something for their investment, because there's so much out there right now. Like, and it's amazing too, like to go to the shops is taking forever to go, because there, no matter where you go, you're just seeing so many different things right now. And
I think there's a funny thing that someone pointed out to me once, that comics sort of has these cycles, and there's different cycles to it. And like one of them is like, you know, the Marvel being, you know, creatively more exciting, or DC being creatively more exciting. And then there's like the big two versus indie being more exciting. And there's, you know, speculators versus readers kind of thing. And it's all these things. And I was talking to a friend of mine who really like studies this stuff and watches it recently. And he was like, it's a reader's time. It's like very much a story time. It now is an era, we're entering a time where story matters the most, and like that's where indie books really shine. And I sort of picked his brain on it, and I was like, when is the last time you feel like that was happening? And he's like, oh, it's easy. It's you know, Saga leading into Wicked and Divine and Sex Criminals and Pretty Deadly, and all these books like sort of coming out that are just like these major Image books that felt like a movement. And I was like, yeah, this sort of feels like a start of a movement to me. Like there's so many good books that are just like every week there's something that's someone's chance to have a new favorite comic of all time, I feel like, on the shelves, and that's awesome.
And especially too in this age, we're seeing a lot more ongoing series with that too, which I think is a really awesome feeling as well. Like, even though, like I say, limited series, you know, beginning, middle, end is always great, but to see that we're seeing more ongoing in that aspect, I think it's just such a big bucket of win.
Yeah. I think, you know, that's what when comics is at its best, I think it can support ongoing books, and that's what comics does. That, you know, I said to someone, I said, it's what comics does and no one else does. The only other people who do it are soap opera, that to have that ongoing story that's just infinite and goes out forever. And then someone said, well, wrestling. And I was like, oh yeah, wrestling. So but it's, you know, that's rarefied air in storytelling. Like to be able to, you know, Spider-Man is the book my dad read when he was a kid, and like, you know, it's going to be a book when I die, and still going. And like that's a beautiful thing, to have that kind of thing that we can only really do in a few places, and comics is one of them. And so, yeah, I love an ongoing comic. It's like, I think it's very important to the DNA of what comics is and why they matter.
Yeah, to back that up, as a wrestling guy, obviously doing a wrestling show and everything, I'm always drawn to story. And I mean, I love comics too, but I'm always drawn to a story. And nothing against the great artists out there, because I love great artwork, you know. But it's like I'm one of those weird people who I read a book, and I'm reading for the story. I'm reading to look at the story, and then I go back and then I look at all the art like a little closer, because I'm more engrossed. Like if you can engross me in the story, I find that if I'm staring at the art the first time, like, not saying that it's not beautiful, like, I love looking at art, but it's like if I'm staring at that instead of like thinking about the story, then I'm like, well, this book's probably not for me. I mean, I'll say how great the art is, but I'm like, oh, it didn't engross. But if I'm reading a book and I'm like, oh man, this story has got it's almost like reading a novel at that point, Junction. Like, well, what happens next? And what happens next? And it's kind of like, I feel that way with a lot of books. And reading, we're taking everyone down with us. The first issue, it was the same thing. I was like, and then once again, the art is mind-boggling good. So it's kind of just like you're stuck in between, and then you get to the end, and I'm like, all right, let me go back and really look at this. And like, it's like almost like a 2 read through, just because I want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I mean, I definitely have those books where I'm like, and I have it going the other way too on some things, where I'm like, yeah, I didn't really pay that much attention to the story. I was kind of just loving the pages, and I go back and have to reread it and dive in again. It's a you know, that's, I think, why another reason that I love comics so much is that they're really like, you can approach it in a lot of different ways, and it can be very layered for you, how you choose to experience it. You can make it as layered as you want it to be.
I was going to say, what was the first comic that hooked you, that made you a fan?
The first comic that I mean, I learned to read reading comics, and that was my brother. I have an older brother, and he would buy comics and say to me, like, "Don't touch them, or I'll kill you." And of course, he would go out, and I would sneak in his room. And so, like, the first stuff I was reading was he was reading X-Men and Superman, and so I couldn't read when I started going in and sneaking into his room to read, but I could sort of tell what was going on in the pictures, and I think that's what hooked me on it at first. But X-Men, he was reading a lot of the Chris Claremont X-Men, and he was collecting that, and that to me was like just the craziest thing I'd ever seen. And I just remember being, you know, like a little kid, like just above a toddler, and just being like, what am I looking at? And I can still look at those books and sort of have that moment of just being like, how is this real? Like, this is so great. Like you know, I think about like the Dark Phoenix saga and just being like, this is the craziest story. And like, I read it when I was 4.5 and had no idea what it was about. And now I'm an adult and still I'm kind of like, I don't fully get it, but I love it so much. So yeah, the X-Men was really the book that made me fall in love with comics as a tiny little kid.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we were talking about the ongoing series and such. How far is this going? Because I think I heard this was supposed to only go 6 issues, but are we talking longer, or what's the status here?
So okay.
Oh boy, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Gotta get it out there. The story is 6 issues long.
Okay.
When we started doing it, it was 6 issues. And partway through it, I was thinking to myself, man, I really, really love making this book. And I love these characters in this world. And while I kept thinking that while I was doing it, Stefano emailed me and was like, man, I really love making this book. And he was just like, is there a chance to do more? And I love an ending. I can't start a story if I don't know the end. Mm-hmm. And so I had an ending, and it was the 6-issue story. But I'm also was building the world so much that I was like, what would the sequel be? And what would the sequel to that be? And so I know what the ending is at 6 issues. And if no one picks up the book, or not enough people pay making books is expensive, and whatever. If not enough people pick up the book, or it's just not working for people or whatever, the 6-issue stories we're going to complete, and that is what we set out to tell. I don't want people thinking like, oh, they canceled it and they didn't finish the story. That is the story. With that said, if people really like it and we really love it, and if people like it a quarter as much as me and Stefano like it, yeah, we want to do at least 12 and hopefully 18 issues, because we know we have a bigger story we'd like to get to eventually.
Yeah, I definitely think the audience is going to jump on this. They just have to pick it up, and they're going to get hooked instantly.
I hope so. I mean, we really, we're kind of putting our all into it, and I think it's always a risk, because it's a very personal book to both of us, and I think it's a very sort of intimate book. And when you do things like that, sometimes that's not for everyone, and that's okay. Like, I don't judge people if they're like, yeah, that's not my speed. I think it's okay if people don't. But with that said, we really care about it, and we'd like to do more. And so if other people find that they really care about it, hopefully we will do more. I'm hoping we do, but I don't want to promise that and not do it. And I don't want people to think that if we don't do it, that they're not getting what we set out to do, because they were 100% getting the 6-issue story that we were going to make always.
I'm just throwing out there with the on sale date of the 26th. Everybody that I know is getting at least issue 1 in their Easter basket. So
yeah,
maybe issue 2, because it should be right around that time. So maybe
we did that on purpose. We were hoping for the Easter basket set. We were really hoping for the Easter basket crowd. It's some years Cadbury takes it. Some years it's us. It's it's our time. They had enough Cadbury.
Now we've given me too many ideas. Now I'm going to attach Cadbury's inside the die cut hole for everybody. So if you're on my Easter list, you're getting something pretty awesome this Easter.
I would really like to take a minute to examine the sentence if you're on my Easter list.
I don't know. I do know I'm buying an extra basket this year because we have a guest coming in to visit us. Because as a wrestling fan, Easter weekend is also WrestleMania weekend.
Oh yeah, okay.
So it's
Fair.
kind of like WrestleMania Sundays coming up. So there is extra people that will be around. So it just gives me more. What I'm saying is, in a roundabout way, is it gives me more options to buy more books. So we're going to do our part to get more to get books 12 through 18.
There you go. And you know what? Like maybe people are reading a book and they're eating some chocolate and they're getting chocolate on the book. Got to throw it out, get another one.
Get another
one. Just saying.
I was also going by the philosophy is, you give them the first taste for free and then hopefully they go back and buy more. So there you go. Not just that, but I wasn't thinking about getting chocolate on the book and then having to buy another first issue.
Yeah. Well, I'm a monster. I'm a monster. So that's where my brain goes.
Either way, more books. The more books, the better.
That's the whole thing. The reason we paired up with Easter this year was we're trying to sell books, and that's always been the plan. And whether you're on someone's basket list or you need to make your own basket, we have the book for you.
That was the most creative thing that I came up with today. Damn it.
But it works because of the results in buying multiple copies. We've done our job.
Exactly. Now I've put that in people's heads. Maybe more people will do this. And once again, you can still now if you do well for the Easter thing, if there's a second run, you have to have a special variant cover with some sort of Easter bunny on it. I don't know who's going to draw that, but we could definitely go after that. It's going to be fun.
Obviously, I was not prepared for the level of marketing ingenuity we were bringing here, and we were not up to speed. Yes, obviously, we're going to have some bunny stuff. Obviously, we're going to need some. Look, if we're going to talk about die cut and chrome covers, is it too late? I have to call Image. Is it too late to get a chocolate cover? Is that something we can do? I don't know. My gut tells me yes, that's something we can't do, but I'm going to make the call. I'll try and get us a chocolate cover.
Listen, a chocolate cover is ingenious because you have to buy 2 copies at that point.
Oh yeah.
Because then you have a copy without a cover because there's no way you're not eating.
You're eating the cover off the book, and then you're getting 2, and it's beautiful, and everybody wins.
Exactly. So I feel like that's a win-win for the publisher. I don't know why we need to market this. Somebody quick copyright it. I don't know. Somebody else.
If we weren't live, I would be like, okay, can we not send this out? Because we're all going to make a ton of money right now. But we just gave this idea.
We just gave it away. Although I don't know. I don't want to be part of the logistics team that figures all that out. So whoever wants to figure that out, they can be smarter than me.
Yeah.
However, speaking of awesomeness. We as we know coming into this, 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank is being adapted for a movie. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So now in a perfect world where we're taking everyone down with us gets picked up as well. Who do you want to see cast as Annalise?
Oh, jeez. I don't know a lot of children. Actually, this is funny because if you'd asked me this a month ago, I wouldn't have had an answer. But I just watched the Skeleton Crew, the Star Wars show, and the cyborg girl.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh, she's great. She's so fun and really good. And I was like, she could be Annalise. She was really good. I mean, all that show was crazy because all those kids were really good, and I really liked that show. But I thought that the cyborg girl was really like a good mix of like tough and vulnerable and just really brought a lot. And I was like, that's what we need. Otherwise, I have to be like Meryl Streep. Like,
hey, listen, we do have de-aging.
Yeah. CGI Meryl Streep, or don't even, she's just great. She can do it. Her range, she can do 13. I believe in her. She's amazing. She's our nation's best actor.
You see, I was speaking of which, I would have a hard time, although because I was thinking of like badass kid actors. I don't know if you ever saw the horror comedy Abigail.
Oh, I did, but it's on my list.
The girl that plays the vampire in that would probably work amazingly well. I can't remember her name, so yeah.
Sure. That's on my list. I will check it out, and then probably not a kid anymore. Been a few years.
I think she still is. I think in that movie she was like 12, and that's only about a year and a half.
Something
old.
like that. I mean, God, I haven't seen that
She's
forever.
young. She's very
Oh,
young.
really? I thought she was
Oh,
like
yeah.
14 or 15 or
No,
something.
she's super young.
Okay.
And that movie just came out, so I mean,
Yeah.
we're close enough.
We're close enough. Okay. If we go right now.
If we go
Yeah.
right now, we have to. So this is now our pitch to Hollywood. You have to do this
Yeah,
now.
you have to do
if
this
not,
now
we'll
because
leave her
she's gonna age out of it. Yeah. Okay.
and then we're gonna have to go with Meryl Streep.
Yeah, look,
That's gonna cost a lot more money.
That's gonna be a larger budget. Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be a budget problem, and for us, it's not gonna be a problem because we're gonna be rich off chocolate covers.
That's
And
true.
so we
That's
can
true.
finance it ourselves, but if Hollywood wants a piece of it, they're going to have to bring cash to the table, and they can decide if they want to go now or they want to wait 6 months and put down Meryl Streep money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I enjoy that one. That's a very good take.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing too that I'm signed up for now, and I've really been enjoying what I've been digging, is your Substack, and how we're seeing that more creators are using that. And how has that been good and bad for you for connecting with fans?
Yeah, I think I'm in a weird position with it because Substack for a small window sort of wanted to bring comics people in, and so they reached out to a bunch of comics people and sort of sponsored us and gave us grants to make comics for them and make comics on the platform or do whatever on the platform, but just use the platform. And so I signed a contract with them to do work there, to move it there, and actually sort of fell in love with a lot of it. I after years on Twitter, it was nice to be able to put thoughts out there and not have the most horrible things come back to me. And so that I enjoy, and like I wish there was more conversation, and some people Substacks do have that where there's a lot more comments and a lot more conversation, and I maybe don't do a good job fostering that, but I miss the sort of interaction of it. The other thing is that I in doing it, my contract with them meant that I had to post a certain amount of posts, and it came out to about 2 a week, and it was right in the middle of the pandemic. And I promise this is true. I used to be an interesting person. I used to travel and go eat interesting meals and go to cool places and go to see bands play and hang out with cool people. And then the pandemic hit, and I just basically was like, okay, I'm just going to stay home all the time and just be on my couch and watch movies. And so suddenly I had to write about myself twice a week when I was not doing anything at all. When I just be like, I watched Stranger Things, I watched this movie, I watched The Godfather this week, whatever it was. It suddenly I was like very aware that I was supposed to be sharing a lot of my life with people, and I was like not doing anything interesting. And from that, I got the idea to start a podcast, which is a very original idea. And so I contacted my buddies Ethan and Griffin, who are comic podcasters, but they're also comic book writers. They made the excellent Kill Your Darlings at Image, which is a Eisner nominated book, great book. But they did podcasts with Donnie Cates and Ryan Stegman, and we're doing stuff with Brian Bendis. And I was like, hey, do you want to come do a podcast with me so that I can put out more newsletters that aren't just me talking about me twice a week to people when I have not that much to say? And that it's been fun. I'm not a good podcaster, so I'm always a little self-conscious of it and a little bit like hesitant to be like, oh, go listen to a podcast. But I like talking to comic creators, so it's fun in that regard. And it sort of pushed me out of my comfort zone, which I like.
So I was going to say, you're just a normal podcaster like the rest of us. You always have that, like there's always like that somebody's going to discover that I'm not good at this.
It's funny because I like Ethan and Griffin make fun of me because I'm always like, God, I finish everyone and I'm always like, guys, that was terrible. And they're like, it wasn't, it was fine, it was good. Or, like they're very nice to me and they're like, it was good, you're good. They're very good. They're good hosts and I'm not. And the longer I go without doing someone else's podcast, the more I believe them. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that was good. And then I come and do something like this where you guys are like professional and good and asking questions that are interesting. And I'm like, oh no, I suck at this. I'm really bad. So you've reset my counter to like, oh, I probably shouldn't have a podcast. But
I was gonna say I
Yeah.
appreciate the compliment, but I did say my Easter list. I mean,
I
basket
know,
list.
I've never come up with anything as good.
I
as
mean,
that.
But that's like a subliminal thing.
that wasn't my finest of moments. But
Look,
now people are gonna ask to get on that list. It's
look,
crazy.
you've got an Easter list. We've invented the chocolate variant. Like we've done more here than I've done in like 100 episodes of my show. It's kind of pathetic for me.
I mean, maybe that's just we're gonna have to just work together more often because it seems like the creativity is coming now.
Yeah, we're really making something special here in the field of edible variants.
Yes, exactly. I really feel like that could be some money. If somebody could figure that out, that's going to be a rough one. But I mean,
like we're joking about it, and also like it's actually not a bad idea.
it's not the more that we talk about it, I'm like, it's not a terrible idea. I don't know how the logistics would ever work, but it's not a terrible idea.
I mean, we've had scratch and sniff covers. I mean, there's possibilities.
Yeah, there's possibilities. Yeah,
definitely possibilities. So one of the things, speaking of podcasting and doing this, that turn a page, we'll say fans, if you will, or listeners, viewers, will know is when I'm on, I like to hijack a question on this show.
Okay.
Usually I hijack it for pro wrestling, but tonight it's not pro wrestling. It's another love that I have, and also Ken here has.
Yes.
And I know that you have, because you in the past worked on Ghostface's album.
Mm-hmm.
So right there. So as somebody who enjoys hip hop as well as Ken here, what is your take on the current state of hip hop and how that's working?
I am. All right. Well, we're going to cards on the table with this one.
Oh, here we go.
I'm not as up on current hip hop as I should be.
Mm-hmm.
So the bad person answer would be, I think the current state is bad, but I don't think that's correct. I think everyone says that, and it just means that sometimes it is bad. Sometimes when people are like, I used to like this thing and I don't anymore and it's bad. Sometimes it is now bad, and sometimes people are just out of touch. I'm out of touch. I will say I'm not a Super Bowl guy, but I do love Kendrick a lot. And I think, anytime he puts out a record, which is infrequent, it's pretty impressive. So I like that. I know there's a new Wu-Tang album coming, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, I don't know what the last hip hop record I was really amped on was, and I don't think that's hip hop's fault. I think that's mine.
I think that I'll try to explain this because I kind of have the same thing as you. I'm a big Kendrick fan because I think when he puts out stuff, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I do like J. Cole.
Yes. Same.
Oh yeah, J. Cole's for sure.
And Big Sean as well. Although Big Sean hasn't done stuff in a while.
I went on tour with J. Cole for
Oh really?
Yeah. Not with him, but like it was a traveling thing, and so I was like, I met him and hung out with him though, and like was working at these shows he was on, and he was I got to watch him every night, and he was like great. And I'm not like I'm often not impressed with hip hop live. Hip hop is not always like in a big venue, like up close and intimate. Great, like I've seen a lot of like small, like I've seen the Roots play in a room to 50 people. I've seen Farside play in a room to 50 people, and it's awesome. But like when you get big, I don't think hip hop works well for me. But J. Cole could work a room, and I was like, oh, this is really good. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I was good. No, I'm glad for that because it kind of separates, because it really does put it in this perspective that, and I know every generation is like, oh, we had the best, but honestly, I mean, where we like a lot of us came from was like the golden era of hip hop. Whether you're talking about like going back, if you're going back to like Wu-Tang and even like Biggie and Pac, and then like even after that with like Jay-Z, DMX, Nas, and the list goes on and on. Like it's really like, and Lil Wayne, obviously, who's still around. So like, but a lot of these artists are still making music, and they're making great music, and nothing against them, the kids, like, but I never got the whole mumble rap thing.
Sure.
Like I never really got it. It wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I always looked at it like this, and like I said, maybe it sounds like I'm like the get off my lawn guy, but I always was like, if you listen, like I can argue art when you're listening to Nas, when you're listening to like Wu-Tang, when you're listening to Biggie, et cetera, et cetera. I can argue that that's an art. Just listen to it. It's to the rhyme is to a beat. Sure. It's musical. Like now you can argue that for Kendrick or J. Cole. Like you can go, oh man, look at that art form. It's beautiful. When you're just basically and finishing every word, every sentence with one word, and that's how you're rhyming, and it's just literally on loop, it becomes no longer an art form.
I will say, not to play devil's advocate, I feel like, and this is a funny thing for me, because when I was a kid, I liked hip hop, and my dad was always like, it's not music. And I'd be like, this is Public Enemy. Like, listen to this. Like, come on. Like, this is revolutionary poetry. Like, there's no way this isn't affecting you. And my dad would begrudgingly like concede on some of it and whatever. But he, I think that there's one, we do a thing, and we do it in everything, and we do it in comics, where people are like, comics used to be better. Remember when Watchmen and Batman Year One came out in the same year? And it's like, yeah, Watchmen and Batman Year One came out in the same year, and that was a crazy year. But there was also a lot of crappy books then. And I think when you're like Jay-Z and Nas and Biggie and Pac against like a SoundCloud rapper, it's like, well, yeah, it's a SoundCloud rapper. Like they're not going to be on the Mount Rushmore of comics of rap or whatever. But I also think, and I don't like mumblecore rap. It doesn't do anything for me. I'm not a fan. But I also think like the appeal is something different. They're not doing the same thing, right? Like you're talking about lyricism. You're talking about like Nas is one of the great modern poets. Like he just is. Like he's a Bruce Springsteen. He's a Bob Dylan. He's like that level of just like talking about culture and life and recontextualizing it for the masses in a way that changed people's whole worldviews. Nas is one of those people. Jay-Z, to a lesser extent, I think is one of those people. But like Chuck D is one of those people, like for sure. But the mumble rappers, like they're not trying to do that, right? Like they're on a different thing, and it's like being like, well, I like Led Zeppelin because the crazy musicianship. That doesn't mean that like your guy with an acoustic guitar isn't also doing something cool. It's just so different. I just feel like it's so different that you can't be like whatever. That you can't. It's hard to compare them because they're not aspiring to the same thing. Like the I don't even know who the mumble guys are. Like, I don't.
I'm with you there.
Well, the thing is, and I agree with you on that. Like, because if whatever they did move somebody, that's awesome. I'll always say that's why the first thing I've always said is it just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Like even then, like even going back to like talking about the rappers we're talking about, you ended up going back like to the backpack rappers,
sure,
like Quali and Most Def, all of Tribe, like you have like all these guys who like, everybody was like, oh, backpack rappers, you're either into it or you're not. And it's just like, well, they were all poets. Like going back to what you said, you can definitely see like a difference between a lyricist and somebody who is, like a hit maker. Because I mean, nobody's going to ever accuse, the big timers of being, poets, and that was in our era too, or Juvenile. He was definitely not. Actually, that was probably where mumble rap started. Now that I think about it, he did do ha, which is the same thing. But I'm just throwing it out there. I will say this for the SoundCloud rappers though, they have some dope beats. I
think some of it is just like. Yeah, some of it's just party music. Like I always think about the Beastie Boys, and it's just like the Beastie Boys wrote some mind-blowing rhymes and some mind-blowing music, and were great musicians and pioneers. But they also wrote "Fight for Your Right to Party," which is like, it's a dumb song. Like that's a dumb frat boy party song. Like it's not doing anything for anyone other than getting them pumped up. The Beastie Boys are amazing because they're both of those things. But like, there's something to be said. I love "Fight for Your Right to Party." There's something to be said for being like, yeah, you just put this on at a party. It's a mumble rapper, and they're gonna get people moving. Like that's cool. Like I'm not like a techno guy. I'm not like an EDM guy. I never was. Like I went to raves when I was a kid, and I don't do drugs. And I was kind of like, I don't like to dance. I don't like to do drugs. So I don't know why I'm here. Like, but like, I got the idea that it was like, oh, you just came here to like vibe. But I would much rather have someone saying something to me that matters. And yeah, I'm hoping that's the difference. And then it's not just, it got bad.
Yeah.
It's funny it's funny you said that about EDM. It's how I feel about jam bands.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I don't get it.
I don't disrespect them. I think they're amazing, like musically, like they're amazing. But I'm just like, that's not for me.
Yeah. I've tried probably 10 points in my life to be like, maybe I at a point in my life now where I could appreciate the Grateful Dead, and then I put it on, I'm like, nope, I hate this so much. I hate it so much. and I'm just like, I constantly am like, I'm matured and I get it now. It's about the journey and it's about the playing off each other and the intricacy and just being lost in the moment. I put it on. I'm like, nope, it's awful. It sounds bad. Like it sucks. I take it off. And I totally get it. I have no interest in mumble rappers. I'm not going to throw that on ever. And then I'm just like, yeah, that dude likes it. Cool. Good for him. I'm glad he likes it. But I also, it is true though. Like, I don't know. I'm a big backpack rap guy. I was big, like, into that stuff and Dell and Farside and stuff like that. Like I love Dell. I love Farside. I love those bands. And I did like sort of fall out for a long time. And then there's things that'll bring me back. And I that's what I always like, is that, like, I was really into like the hieroglyphic stuff. And then I got out of it. And then I got into like Dead Prez and like the coup and stuff like that, where I was like, oh, these guys are doing like really intense political stuff and being really smart about it, and it feels cool and it feels different, and like, like Immortal Technique and guys like that, where I was just like, oh, this feels really good. And then you sort of get out of it. I'm hoping that every 5 years something comes along, and like, yeah, I think it's weird because they're so popular, because they're like the top of the heap, but like Kendrick and J. Cole are definitely that, where you're like, this feels special, this gets me excited about that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that's going to get everybody special too at the comic shops, to kind of tie everything up, because I know we're running out of time, is we're taking everybody down with us. Listen, wherever you're watching this video, wherever you listen to it on podcast form, make sure you get to the comic shops before March 3rd. Pre-order a couple copies of this. This is a mind-blowing experience that you're seeing the best of creativity come out, and there's so many different elements involved. There really is nothing like this on the shelf, and you're going to be sitting there and literally just blown away by what you see in these pages. And we definitely need to see more of this. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us. We definitely have to have you back on and recap this series and so much more.
No, thank you guys. This was super fun. I don't get to talk about rap a lot, so that was great. Or chocolate covers. I never got to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll be dialoguing this. Like I said, we might have to say, like, this is the start of some new form in comics there for the covers. Like, you can have Chromane, you can have die cut. No, you need a chocolate cover.
You need a chocolate cover. Dark chocolate, white chocolate.
Oh,
I mean, yeah.
Variants in the chocolate covers now, we're talking.
Variants are endless. The possibilities
are endless.
Yes. Yeah. And on behalf of Rich and myself, we'll end it like we always do on Turn a Page. When you're at the comic shops and you have a great issue in your hand, such as we're taking everybody down with us on March 26th, and you see somebody struggling to find something, hand yours off to them. Tell them Turn a Page. We'll see you next week.
I'm out.